All right, so it's great to have you back, Nick. You've been on the show before, Dr. Nick Delgado. You're a specialist in anti-aging medicine for the most part, and so much of that really involves hormones because the biggest part of aging really is hormones. And as a lay person, it seems to me that hormones are like the one of the final frontiers of medicine. They're so complex, and it's really not about what your levels are as much as the ratios of what you have of hormones that you have. Did I have that right?
Yeah, partly. Hormones can be in a certain ratio, and they can either become deficient or excessive. So when you say ratio, you're right. There's a balance. A majority of people, as they age, there's this gradual decline of testosterone, particularly in men. And whereas women, their hormone levels change from month to month, with men, it's so gradual, they don't notice it. So at one point in their life, they don't have enough testosterone and they start feeling depressed. And they think, well, maybe it's my job, or it's my significant other, my mate, or, maybe it's just, I just don't have a zest for life anymore. That's a sure sign that that man has excessive estrogen levels that are inhibiting his testosterone receptor site. So you really have to look at the complexity and realize that you want to restore his testosterone levels. So there's certain creams, there's certain capsules you can take, certain herbs, and you want to help clear out these harmful estrogens that are actually interfering with his testosterone receptor sites. Same with women. Women, when they have a decline in their testosterone level and a buildup of this harmful type of estrogen, they'll lose their libido, their interest in sex, because women need testosterone, although 10 times less than men, to get a clitoral erection, to get engorgement in the clitoral area, in the vaginal area, and so forth. There needs to be enough of this testosterone, which also helps the nitric oxide levels. So nitric oxide is a relaxation molecule that when you get this feeling, and you've heard of PEA, maybe phenylethylalanine, and they talk about giving chocolate at Valentine's Day, right? Mm-hmm. And chocolate has a little bit of PEA, but not much. Really, PEA is what we call love at first sight hormone. When you look at a person that you're attracted to, almost instantly this hormone releases from your brain. It says something about this person I'm highly attracted to. Mm-hmm. It could be a genetic connection. They have that genetic chromosome balance that's missing or matching your need to procreate.
What we basically have is an epidemic of estrogen dominance in men, women, and children right now because of all the environmental xenoestrogens. And I mean, I think that we're really seeing a lot of, in the culture, we're seeing that. We were talking about hormones and behavior before, and we're really seeing that with this kind of the sort of snowflake culture and the safe space culture. It seems like everyone is completely roided out with estrogen, like toxic estrogen. They can't handle anything. I mean, it's kind of terrifying to me, actually, to see that young people, they can't take it. They can't take the slightest little anything in life. I mean, that's when you're young. I mean, for me, nothing. That people could say whatever they wanted to me. I could give a damn, So I knew who I was. I didn't need anybody to tell me who I was. I wonder if this might be a reflection of this estrogen toxicity in everybody's in our population's bodies. It's just not normal.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because as a man gets older, when a man reaches around age 50, he may have more estrogen than a 22-year-old menstruating young female.
Right.
And when a man has that much estrogen, he becomes a little more sensitive, yet he may cry during the commercials. I mean, I've literally experienced myself when I had estrogen dominance before I realized what was going on. I'd get emotional, and ironically, some men, when they take testosterone, it almost immediately aromatizes or converts over to more estrogen.
Right.
So initially a man's taking maybe a shot of testosterone or a cream of testosterone, not knowing that that's maybe not the best form of testosterone to use, and he needs to use some estrogen inhibitor, and so some of the doctors will prescribe a medication, Arumadex, tamoxifen, which is similar.
It's chemo. That's a chemo drug, isn't it? Isn't that a chemotherapy?
Yeah. They discovered it will suppress the estrogen levels, but sometimes too low. So and there may be side effects with those medications. You have to use them, if you do use them, in very low dose.
Right.
So I discovered an herb called DIMD, a phytochemical herb,
right.
DIM, dianylmethane, and indole-3-carbinol. And at that time, there was a debate in the medical literature, which is best, DIM or indole-3-carbinol. And I said, so why debate it? I just put it together into a cream and later into a capsule that I called Estroblock at that time. And I was trying to help men with estrogen dominance, because I had the problem too. And so I started taking the product, and I took a product I called Testravita, which had Scottish pine bark and DIM in it, and it had some DHEA and pregnenolone, which are important hormones that help with brain function and feeling of well-being. And as I used this DIM, I used the capsule form of it, and with the cream together, it actually lowered my estrogen levels. And I knew that because I sent it to one of the top urinary hormone metabolite laboratories, and they said, we've never seen anything like this. Your estrogen levels used to be high, and after you took these products, your estrogen levels are down to the lowest level we've been able to detect in a guy. I started looking at that science, and I created another product called Testravita, which has the herbs that improve libido, because you have to have that interest, that desire, and that's partly the release of what's called free testosterone, that bioavailable form of testosterone. And that comes about by using Avena sativa, milky green oats, and nettles, and maca, and these herbs attach to a binding globulin called sex hormone binding globulin, and then it releases more of the bioavailable free testosterone into your system. And it works for women too. We did a study. There was a guy came to me, and he had a product called Great Sex in a Bottle. Do you like that name?
Yes.
And the men and the women were taking the product, but he had no clinical science to prove it worked. So I did people's baseline testosterone, their free and total testosterone of men and women, and then they took their capsules, and at the end of 10 days, I rechecked them. And sure enough, by using those specific herbs, Avena sativa, nettles, it had long jack, it had a few other herbs, but it truly increased their free testosterone enough that they all reported increased libido and sexual desire.
Well, yeah. So all of these things are herbal, and that's funny because oats are a big part of that. So they were feeling their oats. That's very interesting.
Sow your oats, yeah.
Yeah, they seemed to know that back then, apparently.
Well, milky green oats, it's not just the oatmeal. It's the green sprouts of the oats. And the reason we discovered this, it was almost by accident. There was a group of people in China, and they had a pond of koi, the fish, those big, huge fish. And someone had a sack of the Avena sativa. I don't know, I guess they were going to use it for the crops. And it got dumped into the pond. And these koi fish started eating it up. And then within days, they noticed the koi fish were mating. I mean, they just went crazy. They were all mating, and they wondered what happened. So they actually measured their hormone levels, and the testosterone of fish, which, like lizards and fish, you can see that their testosterone level actually went up dramatically. And so then they tested it in men, and they found the same thing, that their testosterone level went up. And then we found out later that it was the sex hormone binding globulin that was involved. And interestingly enough, a plant-based whole food nutrition diet increases sex hormone binding globulin, which is good because it leaves less of the free-floating hormone, and it helped clear up the skin for acne. So I accidentally also discovered the solution for acne, and I wrote a book, Annihilate Acne Now. But if you want better sex, you want to have enough free-floating hormone, testosterone. So you have to modulate or bring that sex hormone binding globulin down to the mid-range. So you don't want it too high or too low. See, that's what we've learned from science and the ratios of hormones.
Yeah, people might be seduced into the idea that more is better, but that's not how hormones work. It's really about a balance. You have to be smart about that.
Yeah, I've measured bodybuilders with testosterone levels of off the charts, like 4,000, 6,000, 8,000 level.
Yeah.
And a normal, healthy, my son, who's 23 years old, his testosterone's about 1,500. A young person can have deficient hormone levels. I had a young 22-year-old man, he came to me and he said, Nick, he goes, I got to confide in you. I've never had an interest in sex. I've never, I can't develop muscle.
It's very common these days. There's a whole...
I can't develop...
Yeah,
I can't develop muscle when I go to the gym.
Yeah.
He says, I feel depressed. He said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I felt this way my whole life. And he didn't realize that there's endocrine disruptors. There's xenoestrogens in the environment. There's plastics. There's toxins. There's fire retardant that they have to put in the beds, and that's loaded with estrogen. The sources of estrogen come from cosmetics. It's in pesticides. It's in the use of dieldrin, it's PCBs in fish. It's concentrated because it's ended up from the factories. It goes in the ocean, then the fish, it concentrates. Right. So if you eat fish, you're getting loads of estrogen in your body. And there's animals in Florida that when all these xenoestrogens are pouring into the water supply, they're consuming and getting into their bodies, and they can't reproduce any longer.
I've heard that they change sex because some of these lower animals can actually flip their sex somehow.
Yeah, so I helped him out, and what I did was I put him on a supplement regime. I put him on estroblock originally, and then later I realized that estroblock would shift the bad estrogen to the good estrogen, and that was a good thing, but it wouldn't prevent the aromatization of testosterone over to estradiol. So I started looking at turmeric and astragalus and cypress, and I met with Dr. Chi, and he had a formula, and I looked at that, and I said, that's a smart thing, and I created a product at that time called Live Detox, because it needed silymarin for the liver detoxification, and the liver is the site of estrogen metabolism. Right. So it turned out I put together these herbs at the right concentration, and I doubled the concentration compared to what Dr. Chi had done, because he was doing it for a different purpose, just for estrogen dominance. I was looking at how could we prevent cancer, how could we reduce obesity, how could we help sexual function, and sure enough, it turned out to be a winner. It helped this young man. He started feeling more sexual, but I had to give him Testravita, the herbs with Avena sativa and maca and long jack, and I got him at the highest concentrations possible, because some of these supplement companies, they'll make a product and they'll see a product that works, and then they'll use very small dosages because it's expensive to put these ingredients together. But I put them together, and he started improving his sexual function, but he still wasn't quite right. And I've seen this in some 60 and 70 and 80-year-olds where their body isn't producing enough testosterone. And so it could have been he had a problem with his scrotum, the testicles in just production. There could have been an injury. There could have been a genetic defect. So I had him see one of my doctors, in this case, Dr. Grossman. You've heard of Terry Grossman, but he saw Michael Grossman. And we injected testosterone pellets under the skin. And within a week, he had just felt rejuvenated. Within 3 months, he was a brand new man. So between the herbs, which released more free testosterone, kept the estrogen under control, because the pellets did increase testosterone, but some of it will aromatize in estrogen, and he might be back to the same problem. So he felt like a new man. He got muscle back. His voice deepened. He got a girlfriend. He fell in love. He was able to have erectile function and normal sex. It just changed his whole life.
Yeah, it's amazing. Hormones are like so crucial to life. It's amazing. So the things, your product line, I want to get into that in a moment. They're all phytochemicals. They're really, it's basically, I look at the ingredient list, and it's sprouted grains and plants and things like that for the most part. And these are things that ideally should be in our natural diet, but they're in a more concentrated form. Is that correct? You're saying like having one of those shakes is sort of like the equivalent of having 2 pounds of broccoli a day or something. Would that be about right?
It is. See, the Slim Blend protein, which is rich in fiber, is 30 whole fruits and vegetables, GMO-free. It's organic. It's one of the only protein powders on the market that's completely organic. And we use the plant proteins from rice and hemp and chia seed. And so these make for a really good, complete meal. And then I put together a product called Stem Cell Strong with medicinal mushrooms and herbs that improve sexual function and help libido and help the strength of the body and the immune system, because of course the immune system depends on the modulation of white blood cells and the ability to fight. And it turns out that when women get breast cancer in Europe, they'll embed a testosterone pellet near the breast cancer tumor, and the tumor will go away.
That's very interesting. Very interesting.
They've used DHT cream, which is dihydrotestosterone, and rubbed it in the breast area, and that also helped to minimize the breast tissue tumor. In men who get gynecomastia, they rub on these DHT creams. So I came up with this cream called Testravita cream, and this Testravita is rich in these various phytochemicals and herbs, and so all you have to do is rub it into the skin. Mm-hmm. Some people rub it in the area of their face where they have wrinkles, because it'll kind of help the skin, because testosterone is really good for the collagen in the skin for men and women. So I get reports from my clients. They tell me what it's doing for them. It's just exciting to see the results, because I use the products myself. Sometimes you're self-serving. You create a product for yourself because you're getting older and you want to reverse the aging process. And my goal is to be the longest lived person in history, to be immortal and have sex on my 130th or 140th birthday. I
love that quote. I love that. So what I'm hearing though, okay, so you're creating your product line are their nutrition, their health support, and they're giving you sort of nutrition that you're not really going to get in an average Western diet, or almost any diet really. They're really looking for they support hormone production or block hormone uptake for the most part. Now you were talking about that young man who really sounded like an older man in terms of his hormone balance, where you were putting a testosterone pellets under his skin. Now when we're talking about hormone replacement in anti-aging, they would be like, for example, Dr. Nina, a colleague of yours, she'll prescribe Estroblock for people, but she'll also be prescribing these hormone replacement pellets, these subdermal pellets. Now, are these pellets, they're not herbal, these are pharmaceutical grade hormonal pellets. Would that be correct?
Well, yeah, they are, yet they come from wild yam extract. So they're coming from a plant, and they're bioidentical. Okay. They're identical to the testosterone that's already present in a man or a woman. Mm-hmm. So when we use these interventions, at times, I've had many men respond very well with the Testravita cream and the Testravita capsules, all completely herbal. Now we can just take wild yam, the plant, and we can chemically get the structure of the phytochemical of testosterone and synthesize it to be identical and concentrate it into pellets. So when it's injected under the skin, it releases about 8 to 10 milligrams of testosterone per day, the amount a young man would produce every day at the age of 20. So you really are mimicking what the nature does. Oftentimes I prefer to start always with the creams and the capsules, because if it works, then we don't have to do the intervention with the pellets. But as a man gets 60, 70, 80, sometimes the creams and the herbs aren't enough because their own production has decreased. That's at the telomere site. So that's where I'm working now to help with the chromosomes and the telomeres. So I use a product called Stay Young that helps with astragalus to lengthen the telomeres, and L-carnosine. If you look up the literature, you can see in the white blood cells the telomere length. If they shorten, you're at higher risk of cancer, aging prematurely, diseases. If you lengthen them, your immune system gets stronger, you can fight cancer, you can build up the immune system and sexual function. So I'm looking at all aspects, because you see, aging is a complex problem, and some people age prematurely because of the environment, the toxins. We're exposed to 156,000 chemicals that we were never exposed to just 100 years ago.
Right. It's incredible.
Why not? It makes sense to me. Build up the body with good whole food nutrition, herbs and supplements, and good positive thoughts, good quality sleep, good quality sex, restore the hormones so the immune system's functioning. And with men who have erectile function, most of them have clogged arteries, and they get not just clogged arteries in the heart, the clogged arteries in the penis is so small, when it clogs up, it'll clog up first. So there's this sonic therapy, like the doctors are using a sonic therapy to get rid of kidney stones and so forth. They'll hit this sonic wave. It doesn't hurt in the penis, and they'll give them a pump. They'll enlarge the get erection and bring the blood to that area, and then they'll use this sonic device that Dr. Terry Grossman talks about, and we're making arrangements to get one in our office as well. But it clears out these plaques in the artery, so the man doesn't even need Viagra. He can have sex again, and his blood will fill up in the male organ. So I'm looking at all these natural therapies and some scientific therapies, right, because immortality holds with it that as we lengthen the telomeres and the chromosomes and we sustain quality life and our body is stronger and we're outdoors in the daylight. I work out in the daylight, outdoors in the sun. People say, oh, avoid the sun. Wait a minute. The sun builds up your immune system. It's very, very important for the immune system.
Yes.
So I look at that approach. It may be counterproductive or counterintuitive to the medical profession. Instead of tearing the body down, I'm looking at build the body up, be as strong as possible. Once you learn about thyroid and testosterone and estrogen, then you realize there's about 100 other hormones that are involved. Yeah. And so it's taken me 20 years to really master this subject. And even then, I'm always learning new science. I go to medical conferences and I study with the top doctors because I always think there's something more I can learn. Is kind of my whole goal, is to educate people like your audience, and hopefully they'll get some messages that we can fight cancer, we can fight heart disease, we can fight diabetes, we can overcome these diseases. Michael Greger is coming to our event in the American Academy saying that 17 of the leading 20 killers could be completely reversed. He wrote a book, How Not to Die. So I'm open about talking about my colleagues and their wonderful work. I've created an education library that I hope to share with everyone, with over 500 interviews with the top doctors around the world on immortality, lifestyle medicine, and anti-aging. To me, they're three distinct sciences. You know, clams and lobsters can live to 500 years with no signs of aging. It's just an animal eats them, so we don't get to see anything past 500. Right. Trees can live 1,000 years. And some of these cells, you know, that are animal-derived, actually something about their telomeres, their chromosomes, they don't have that death gene. Whatever it is that clicks over, it changes. So we're racing right now to figure out the biology and the chemistry and the whole aspect of what do you need to do to sustain. So I've done telomere testing on myself and on my clients. We send it off to Spain and we measure the length of the telomeres. And if they're too short, the ones with shorter telomeres, those people are at higher risk for cancer. We used to think that telomerase, which is an enzyme that lengthens the telomeres, could potentially cause growth or abnormal growth or cancer. And Dr. Bill Andrews stated recently, he said he was completely wrong. He was the one that started that myth. He said that now he realizes that maintaining the length of the telomeres may be the very way to fight cancer, to build up the immune system. And so we're really looking at the science of healthy aging and age management. We're thinking, well, maybe if we strive for immortality, you know, let's face it, it may not happen, but at least if you strive for that, you'll live a long, hell of a long, healthy life and be fit and emotionally and physically well till your last breath, hopefully on your deathbed having sex. I don't know.